Hi, welcome to another episode of How to Do Atkins Low Carb. In today's episode, I'd like to deal with a question that I received from one of the viewers that I had. Let me read his email. I have no idea if you are inundated with emails about your weight loss, but if you have the time, I would like to ask you some questions. And just as an aside, I'd like to welcome anybody who ever has questions about weight loss to be sure to ask them of me. I'm willing and able to answer anything that I can or point you at the right direction for those that can. Back to the letter. I have had a lifelong weight problem. I've been on the Atkins program dozens of times. I always lose weight on it, but I always backslide. If you read any of the postings at the Low Carb Friends website, you will see how many people struggle with the program. So it's not any different from any other diet in that respect. My questions are, why do you think it worked for you? What made you stick with it for so long that you lost 200 pounds? Was it sheer willpower? In other words, what did you do that made it work for you when so many people fail? Was it easy for you or difficult? So that's the topic of today's episode, is how to be successful at the low carb diet and what worked for me and hopefully what can also work for you. First, I would like to thank the person for this question. In fact, I like this question so much that I'm making a video on it. I think there are multiple answers on why I was so successful with the Atkins diet. The first and probably greatest reason why I was successful with the Atkins diet was I had a great role model and that I surrounded myself with, both in starting the diet and continuing on in the weight loss. If you watched my first video on my success story, you'll see the reason I started the diet was because of my brother. My brother was a similar weight size as I was and had started the diet about 4 months before I did. And by the time I had started, he had already lost 75 pounds. So, as a typical younger brother, there was always that younger brother competitiveness with him that said, if he could do it, so could I. With that in mind, I was able to have a role model or a weight loss buddy that, whether he knew it or not, he was at least partially responsible for keeping me honest and on the diet and in his footsteps, following his weight all the way down. What do you do if you don't have a brother or a nearby companion that is also trying to lose weight with you? Find an online support board. And that gets into my second one. The other major reason why I was successful with the diet was I found other people that were losing weight as well that I could relate to and surrounded myself with them. Those people were around me and often had suggestions and helpful tips to try that if I had been trying to strike out on my own, I would not have run across them, and I might have got discouraged when my weight loss wasn't as successful as it had been. The third most primary reason why I think I was successful was the accountability aspect. I've mentioned this before, but I think it bears mentioning again. I wore my weight loss on my sleeve. I made sure everyone around me knew what I was doing and therefore could either consciously or subconsciously judge me on whether or not I was being accountable to my diet today. If I was going to hop off, I knew that I believed that people were going to think of me as a failure or as, there he goes again, off the diet. I just wait when he's going to be back up to 400 pounds again. It was that accountability, whether external or internal, that kept me honest on the diet, that kept me motivated to keep proving these people that I was indeed going to be the 200-pounder that I saw in my eye. Some other ancillary reasons why I think I was successful is a hint of competitiveness. You know, if you think you can do it, if you want to prove it to somebody else, if you're trying to do it, if you're trying to better yourself as well as better someone else, that competitive spirit that I had in me gave me one more reason to go out and run, go out and bike when I didn't necessarily feel that I wanted to for the day. It was, well, I knew my brother was probably going to be working out, or those other people on the board were going to be working out that day, and if I was willing to let myself down, I wasn't going to let the competitive spirit in myself down to let them get one more step ahead of me. Thinking of weight loss as a race might not be necessarily helpful at all times. It is somewhat helpful to keep your competitive spirit or your motivation high even on days that you might not wish it to be. Additionally, I had clearly defined goals in my head. It wasn't just that I wanted to be 225 or less for just the sake of being 225. It was the fact that I had real and conscious goals. I wanted to rejoin the National Guard. I wanted to be a better dad and husband for my family. I also wanted to return back to some of the athletic goals that I could do when I was back 18, 20 years old, like playing basketball again. And I also had the hard and concrete goal of an Army PT test that if I was going to join the first one, I had to pass the PT test. So therefore, it wasn't like I could just slack off and just think about weight. I had to think about other things that I knew I could control and push myself to achieve. So it was a combination of both weight and a physical fitness goal that helped me, because not always was the weight so quick in coming off, but I could at least focus on something else if that wasn't working. So if the weight didn't drop in 2 weeks, is my push-ups, if I did that many more push-ups after 2 weeks, or my 2-mile run was that much faster, I could celebrate in the victories rather than only focus upon my defeats or the. Coming back to the last question, why do I think I stuck with it for so long? That got me to 200 pounds. Was it easy or was it hard? For me, that really, easy versus hard, really wasn't a daily thought pattern for most of the time while I was on the diet. Most of the time I was on the diet, it was simply doing day after day the same thing I did the day before. My diet wasn't necessarily as varied as perhaps some people need it to be. I was perfectly happy with that, and some people might have got bored with it. For me, it wasn't that bad. And when I did get bored with it, I went out there and checked the low-carb recipe sites and found something new. Sometimes I even found something that put a new comfort food in the diet. So it's a matter of, for me, really, was it difficult? Some days, of course, it was. Holidays are always a difficult time, or turning down the office cake. But it was a matter of falling back to those concrete goals and determining whether I wanted the goal more or I wanted the immediacy of the reward more. Why do other people fail? Why is the recidivism rate of all diets around 95%? I don't know. It's a matter, for me, it was a matter of all the moons aligning and everything just simply saying, I've had enough of this. I cannot be that former guy. For me, I had to do something, and Atkins Diet fulfilled that for me. Why do others fail? Maybe they don't feel as accountable as I did. Maybe they get into a rut with their food habits and they fail to go out online and get creative with what they're making. Try to find something new. Get themselves out of the rut and they get depressed. For me, I kept my competitive spirit, so depression was never quite the issue despite it being in my family. Or perhaps they didn't find someone to blaze the trail before them. I know if I had felt like I was cutting the way for me, if I was blazing the trail and that I was the first one that was going to be the successful 200-pound loser, I might not have been as successful as I was. But being that I had surrounded myself with other 100-pound losers, and I knew if they had done it, that there was a good possibility that I could do it too, I thought that made my life just that much easier. And one final thing. I know cheating happens to be a hot topic by some in this market, and whether you do or you do not, it really doesn't matter to me. For me, it was just easier that I did not. It comes back to knowing yourself. I knew myself on what I could do and what I couldn't do, and I put myself on a weight loss journey that focused on those that I could, and I didn't put myself in situations that would likely doom me for failure. Well, I hope this helps to anybody else out there on determining how they could too be successful with this low-carb lifestyle. Again, this is Ken Altman, and I thank you for watching. Goodbye.